thank you so much to WaiFung and the United Freedom Collective for that beautiful music, which is WaiFung's very own band. So, thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. It's a real pleasure to be here with you. And we are here to talk about psychedelic mentorship training. So, my name is Simon Ruffell. But before we do introductions, I just want to speak to you a little bit about why the psychedelic mentorship training program exists, who we created it for, and why we think it's important. So, for myself and WaiFung, one thing that we noticed when we started engaging with traditional plant medicines is that most people within Western science actually didn't really have a clue about spirits, about entities, about traditional plant medicine. And we found that there was a massive gap within the scientific framework, within the knowledge that was available to us. And we found that the experiences that we were undergoing would likely be labeled by traditional scientists, by psychology and psychiatry, as potentially delusional, very far out beliefs at best. And most psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists, mentors, and coaches were ill equipped to deal with the experiences that people were having when they came back from the Amazon rainforest. And so what we decided to do was to try and create the course that we wish that we had had when we started to see clients. And for myself, when I started to see my therapist after coming back from the Amazon rainforest, trying to integrate the experiences that I was having, I was unfortunately met with somebody who didn't understand what those experiences were. So, with our organization on NIA, we strive to bridge the gap between Western science and indigenous knowledge. And we do that with the research that we run in the Amazon rainforest, but also in this course. And so you'll notice that the course isn't just with psychiatrists, psychologists, neuroscientists, and leading experts in Western mental health, but it's also with curanderos, shamans, Tibetan Buddhist practitioners, Ayurvedic doctors, to make sure that we're really bridging that gap as best as possible. So I'm going to hand over to WaiFung briefly, and he's going to give you a little overview on what's actually included in the course. But just to give you a bit of a background as to who I am and how I came to this work. So I am originally a psychiatrist. I trained in Western mental health. I trained in Western medicine in order to train in Western mental health, in order to train in psychiatry. It was all that I ever wanted to do. And when I finally got through med school, which was a massive pain, and then eventually got to working in psychiatry, I absolutely loved it. I loved everything about it. I loved the patients. I found it fascinating. I loved the theory. But there was just one problem with psychiatry, and that was that the drug treatments that we had didn't really work, which is a pretty massive problem. Now, I'm not the only psychiatrist who thinks this, and there are psychiatrists all over the world who agree that psychiatry is in crisis. So I found myself traveling around the world trying to find different ways of treating mental health problems from different cultures. And I ended up by a stroke of what I perceived to be fate with somebody who was training with the Shipibo in a cafe in Guatemala, speaking to him with this chance encounter. And he invited me to come down to the Amazon rainforest to drink ayahuasca with him. And so I drank ayahuasca and I had this incredible experience, like I'm sure many of you had. And to much of my surprise, found that there was barely any research looking at ayahuasca from a scientific point of view. Some anthropological research did exist, and there was some research looking at the syncretic churches in Brazil, but barely anything looking at traditional shamanic ayahuasca use within the Amazon rainforest. And so we started conducting research. We initially self-funded our first study looking at ayahuasca and personality, and then got a grant from the Medical Research Council, which is part of the UK government, to start looking at ayahuasca and common mental health conditions, and also the impact of ayahuasca on epigenetics, the way in which our environment, in this case ayahuasca, influences the expression of human genes. Now we are mainly focused on treating veterans who are suffering from PTSD, looking at EEG, the gut microbiome, epigenetic change, psychometrics, qualitative, the works, really multimodal research. And we're doing that in collaboration with Indigenous healers, making sure that we're working in partnership when we come up with the idea for study designs, when we interpret the results that we're collecting, and making sure that those findings are available to the communities that we're working with. So I'm now going to hand over to WaiFung, who is also a fellow student of curanderismo. We've both been training with the Shipibo quite seriously now for the last 6 years, and that really influences the research that we're doing, and of course the course that we've designed, and because we're trying as best as we can in our everyday lives to bridge that gap and then to manifest it in the training that we provide as well as the research. Okay, so handing over to you, Waifeng, for an introduction.
Hello. Can everyone see and hear me okay? Amazing. Yeah. Well, firstly, thank you so much to everyone who's joined on to this call. Really such an honor to see everyone, some new faces, some familiar faces. Yeah. Thank you for taking the time. So yeah, my name is Waifung. I am a clinical psychologist. And yeah, like Simon said, have been on this path of kind of dual training in curanderismo, in the Shipibo tradition. And yeah, I guess the more I have been kind of diving deeper into this work, the more I kind of see the need for safety, like good practice, harm reduction, and yeah, all of these important kind of areas that with the teething problems of, the West trying to incorporate these medicines or these ways of working, especially when things are being seeping into kind of like big pharma and clinical trials and these things, is really important to really uphold also the traditional and the indigenous practices. And this is one of the primary reasons why me and Simon co-founded Onaya, essentially to become this bridge between the Western and the indigenous worlds of knowledge. And yeah, like Simon, I was definitely very kind of disillusioned and feeling quite worn down by the NHS and clinical practices and working in, being based at King's and essentially having to deliver a bunch of treatment that I find myself almost like having to apologize to my patients for, because of how long they've been waiting for it and how not effective it was when they came, and if it was effective, that they quickly came back to their homes and then was surrounded by maybe isolation and lack of community and addiction and things, and having to kind of like come back in this revolving door sort of fashion. And then found myself in the jungle with Simon, and essentially learned to take a bit more like a more holistic way of approach, not just in treatments but also in research. And I really do see both things kind of like in line with each other, this sense of being a scientist and a practitioner at the same time. And actually, as we learn to treat holistically, how can we use what we're doing to inform how we are doing continually, and kind of using data to our advantage in that way as well. And yeah, that's a really big part of this this way we've kind of created this training. Something that we see that are important lessons to be taken from both the Western side and both and also the traditional side, and really not putting one knowledge system better than the other, and really recognizing, yes, the indigenous people are very good at holistic health, using the plants, working with spirit, working with nature. They have this whole technology of ceremony and ritual and prayer and song. But then also there is a lot to be taken from the Western side as well, from the clinical side. There's a lot of really important lessons to be learned from the way they have developed their therapeutic models, how they help one to prepare and integrate, where it, that bookending experience of the crescendo of the psychedelic experience, especially for people who are, going into these really far out spaces. And then having to come back to their everyday 9 to 5 jobs, back to their families, and trying to make sense of a whole new paradigm shift that they've kind of found themselves in their very kind of profound experiences with psychedelics. And I think that's really important at this time, especially as psychedelics and the treatment kind of like starts to boom, and people are kind of accessing more and more, and I guess you're all no stranger to the kind of tourism of psychedelics and ayahuasca and everything, and how important it is now to help that kind of integration process and get people, to land properly and to take off properly as well. So yeah, when we designed this training, we really kind of had that in mind, and is really thinking about, what would we have liked to have had in our own training leading up to this point, and what we have, the good lessons that we've taken away from it. And the whole thing is really kind of thinking about life as a ceremony, and everything is in preparation, and everything is kind of like helping us to navigate the ceremony itself. And then the course also kind of goes into integration as well, and thinking about the embodied aspect of learning, and how actually when we are doing things by the book all the time and just engaging with like online materials or kind of book learning or desktop kind of tasks, and actually how important it is to practice those things and actually have a somatic awareness of these techniques and of these tools that we can then bring to the people we go on to support, and not just to those who we support as well, but also to ourselves, and the importance of the inner work that we put onto ourselves. So one of the core questions that might kind of like get the thinking ball rolling for Dr. Simon is, we often think about what a mentor is, or like what a mentor isn't, and what makes someone apt to be playing that role and that position to guide someone through a psychedelic experience. Do you want to speak some to that?
Mm. Yeah, thanks. So just to let you know the structure of this session, Waifeng and I are going to talk about a few topics that we think are going to be important to us, and we think it'd be important for you to know if you're considering training as a psychedelic mentor. And then we're going to leave plenty of time towards the end, a good half an hour or so, for questions, open it up as a discussion. So please, if you do have questions when we're going, put them in the chat, and then we'll get to them, and we'll leave plenty of time to go over that. So yeah, that is a good question. What is a mentor? Now, a mentor, very simply put, is somebody who walks alongside somebody and guides them when they are going through their process. Now, we need to make some distinctions here, because a mentor isn't a psychotherapist. So psychotherapy requires a different kind of training. You're using different techniques, you're using quite rigid techniques. Some of them can be fantastic, but you're using specific techniques in order to treat a participant. It's not a psychiatrist who's going to be prescribing medications, who's going to be engaged in the medical side of these things. The mentor is much more fluid, much more similar to being a coach, and they can provide guidance drawing from a wide variety of different areas, a wide variety of different disciplines, and then they can impart that knowledge to the client as they see fit. Now, being a mentor can be a standalone qualification, so you don't have to have a qualification. You can do the course and then you're a mentor, and you can see clients in that capacity. But you can also use this qualification if you already have a different qualification. So for example, say that you are a masseuse, then you can use the mentorship alongside that, and you can provide mentorship alongside your physical practice. If you're already a coach, you can go alongside that. If you're already a psychotherapist, then the mentorship can be a qualification that expands your scope of practice. If you're a psychiatrist, the same exists as well. So the reason that we love it so much is because it allows this fluidity, it allows this flexibility in the way that you work with clients. But it also, and I think this is really key, because in my experience, I don't know about everyone else on this call, but the world of psychedelics can be a bit like the Wild West. Our program provides this structure so that you have this ethical framework. So Waifeng and I have taken what we've learned from psychiatry. There are some good things in psychiatry, and we've put that into the course as well as psychotherapy, and it provides this ethical structure, this basis, so it's grounded in some of the Western frameworks that help to protect people and stick on the ethical path, because it can go a little bit west otherwise. Okay, Waifeng, I'm going to fire one back at you. So, what is the Psychedelic Mentorship Training Program? Could you please just give us an overview of what to expect with this 6-month course?
Thank you so much, Gisela. Okay, so with this course, essentially it is a 6-month course. It is really designed for professionals who are busy as well, you know. So like, I think it takes about 3 to 4 hours of your time, and it can definitely be done part-time. And it essentially follows the arc of a ceremony where we are thinking over 5 modules. Like the first module outlines the foundations and ethics. And really, we think it's so important to learn about these different paradigms and the ethical standpoint of these different paradigms, whether it's from a scientific one or an indigenous one. And then once we have those kind of basics of appreciation, understanding for the different cultures, and also for the importance of the therapeutic and the inner work that needs to be done, then comes preparation. And preparation is followed by ceremonial navigation and integration, and then to a final section module on intersections. And throughout the whole course, and we are really quite kind of multidisciplinary in our approach. You know, obviously me and Simon come and represent the more clinical and scientific approach, but we also see a lot of parallels with a lot of different disciplines that can lend itself very well to the psychedelic mentorship space. So for example, Jungian dream analysis, for example, parts work, IFS, for example, psychedelics in Buddhism, and how kind of core concepts in Buddhism can lend itself well to the psychedelic space as well. And we will then bring these experts from these different disciplines to come and share their wisdom and expertise with us. And then on top of that, some of them will be joining us in some of the live sessions, which will happen every other week. And they last about 90 minutes long. And it's a place for us to really kind of get together and share and practice some of our exercises, and really develop those tools of the buddies on the course. And I think it's really important, and a really important aspect of this course is the buddies. So we really want, you know, one thing we've been seeing is like, as I've been seeing in the chat that's evolving right now, that there is such a wealth of knowledge embedded in all of the students, and everyone just has such incredible journeys that take them to our course. And I feel very blessed for that. For example, filmmakers, herbalism, mindfulness practitioners, organizational psychologists, coaches, integrative psychotherapists. Amazing. Such a wealth of expertise in the group. Oh wow, you guys are really cool. Yeah. So and we often see that those who seek this knowledge often have a lot to share also. So we really want to create this framework where you link up with your buddies outside the session as well, to practice some of the teachings within the session and to support each other as well. And one really big part of the embodied learning is that we will ask everyone to undergo a breathwork ceremony with us online. And in preparation and integration of that ceremony, we will really treat it like a ceremony. For example, asking everyone to engage in a 2-week washout period, cutting off salts and sugars and oils, and maybe abstaining from certain things that you struggle to abstain from, to increase the sensitivity of your body, and, you know, refining your intention and supporting each other in the space to do so as well, and helping them land, and really kind of like acknowledging and honoring the importance of that in real time. And then we will then kind of go on to assess how that's done with some of the kind of criterias and competencies that we are looking at. For example, kind of trauma-informed care, therapeutic skills, for example, like intercultural awareness, as well, and harm reduction, kind of like safety planning and sharing, and this will kind of form some of the criteria's requirements for the certification process towards the end, when you will then be awarded the certification for mentorship. And then for those who are in the States, this will also kind of stand as CPD. Essentially, there are continuing educational kind of units that you can gain from this to for those who need to kind of retain their professional licenses. So that's in a nutshell the crux of the course.
Fantastic. Thanks, WaiFung. And, you know, one thing that I've noticed is that there appear to be an ever-growing number of courses that are claiming to be training people in some kind of psychedelic therapy. So what do you think it is that sets our course apart? What's unique about what we have to offer? Why should people do ours rather than anyone else's?
Yeah, well, I think a big part of why we've decided to make this, even though there are other courses kind of on on the out there, is that one, we see a lot of courses that either position themselves on the kind of like the academic and the scientific side, like master's courses or kind of therapy training run by therapists or people who might have less like first-hand experience in working in psychedelic spaces, or is the kind of other way around where there's a lot of kind of traditional practitioners kind of representing the traditional side, and both are amazing. But yeah, we really see this kind of importance of intersecting those two approaches, and how actually when we look around us, there are so many amazing lessons that can be taken from all of these different paradigms that can feed itself so well into the mentorship role. And this is something that we've I guess it's things that we've found really helpful on our journey in the work that we do over the last like 10 years or so, from psychologist to indigenous kind of practice, and really kind of just want to share that with people. And yeah, really hope that you guys can join us on the journey as well. What about you, Simon? Like, yeah, I what is some of, yeah, if you had to kind of share with the group like one of your favorite kind of parts of the course and what really stands out to you the most, yeah, what do you?
Yeah, so I really like finding areas where Western science I call it indigenous science, not just indigenous knowledge or indigenous wisdom, because it suggests that that's lesser than science or it's something different, and I don't think it is. Like in my experience of working with the Shipibo and other indigenous groups, it is a science. It's a tried and tested method, and we need to start accepting that it is a science. And I assume that most people on this call are probably already at that stage, and I'm preaching to the converted. But that's one thing I just wanted to make clear. And the course kind of follows that. We treat what our indigenous colleagues are saying seriously. And I like it when we can find areas when Western science and indigenous science both overlap. They both seem to be speaking about similar things. And one of my favorite areas of study, both in Western psychology and in indigenous science, is dreams, dream interpretation. And so in the course, we look at this from a Jungian perspective, from a Freudian perspective. And then we also look at it from a Shipibo perspective and from a Tibetan Buddhist perspective. And we see where there are overlaps and where there are parallels between the different ways that you can interpret dreams. And then we put that into practice with ourselves, and then we put it into practice with our clients. Everyone dreams. You don't need to be drinking ayahuasca or taking psychedelics to be able to start interpreting your dreams. And it's a wealth of knowledge that are found within the dreams. So that's one of my favorite areas. I also love that it's available to everyone. You don't need to be going to a psychedelic retreat in order to access this. Just every night you can go to this collective unconscious, and you can collect this information and you can begin to interpret it straight away. So that's one of my highlights from the course. How about you? What would you say was one of your favorite bits?
Yeah, for sure. I think like especially for those of us who have trained very kind of like in Western settings, I definitely love incorporating the importance of arts and creativity and symbolism and meaning making into the work that we do. And this is something that the holisticness of the indigenous people have brought in so kind of extensively. And this is something we talk about quite a lot in the course. And so, for example, the importance of the arts, the importance of music, the importance of sound and frequency, and how those things can be used, or how they are used in the jungle, for example, extensively, clinically, surgically. There's some students of curanderismo in the chat. I'm sure you're very aware, and how kind of by incorporating these different modalities of treatment from the artistic side, and bringing them to a scientific lens and how we approach it can be such a helpful thing for our clients and the people that we engage with. Because yeah, a lot of the things that they go through can be so abstract, and it can be so out there, or even just how they make sense of the whole paradigm that people are coming in, or using these methods of communication, like drawing, like painting, like music, where words can often fail us in very kind of ineffable kind of states of mind, when your whole ontology's just kind of been shattered, and then you are just trying to make sense of things. And often we just kind of need space, and often we just need to feel into our bodies, and we could really benefit from these mediums of using an instrument, using a paintbrush, or kind of through our dreams and our interpretations of it, to really help kind of ground some of these kind of really far out experiences. And that's something we really put a strong emphasis on, because we've found that so helpful in our own journeys, and it's something I really bring to my own kind of clinical practice as well. So like outside of Onaya and indigenous stuff, I still work clinically. I work in a with neurodivergent populations, with people who suffer with trauma, and especially for those who have a kind of different way of communicating. Yeah, sometimes I would bring indigenous kind of songs, or like these practices that I've learned from the jungle, into my sessions with people who are really very autistic, for example, and it works very well. Really kind of helps to open up ways of communication that otherwise my more conventional Western training has not given me the tools for doing. So this is something that I really want to highlight, is that intersection of science and arts, that we would like to share with people.
Mm, mm. I think another thing that's important to mention as well is that although we are bringing these things that might be seen as quite far out by the Western medical establishment into the training, and we're taking them deadly seriously because they are incredible tools that we need to be taken seriously. I'm talking about indigenous science and dream interpretation, Ayurvedic medicine, all of these different kinds of practices. We're also grounding these things within Western psychology and Western psychiatry. So within the course, you'll also be taught the fundamentals of conducting a session, conducting a therapeutic session with a client. You'll be taught how to engage in active listening, how to provide patient-centered care, how to conduct trauma-informed care, how to do risk assessments, super, super important, how to be able to fully assess a patient, see how risky they are, and decide whether they need to be referred to someone else. This is another major thing, because if we're dealing with this population, quite a vulnerable population, and as I said previously, it's the Wild West out there with psychedelics, we need to know when somebody might need some additional help above and beyond what we can offer. When might they need to go to a curandero? When might they need to have some negative energy removed, or a negative energetic blockage being removed? What's the difference between spiritual emergency and psychosis? When might they need a psychiatrist? When might they need somebody who's going to try and ground them and maintain their own safety, maybe in a hospital? All of these things are things that we need to be considering. We need to be talking about them. And this is why it's so important that people have an understanding of Western psychology and psychiatry, as well as an understanding of indigenous knowledge, indigenous science, and other practices as well. One of the things that concerns me quite a lot about the movement with psychedelics, especially when people are engaging with indigenous peoples and plant medicine, is that they go from one paradigm to another, and there's no way, they don't integrate properly between the paradigms. If you're coming from a Western background and you're engaging with plant medicine, almost definitely you're going to need some kind of bridge. You're going to need to begin to think in a different way. You're going to need to be able to jump between paradigms. You're probably going to need some support in doing that to avoid ontological shock, which is something that I definitely experienced when I first started working with the Shipibo 10 years ago, when I was painfully questioning my worldview. It was bringing up all of this uncertainty about life, about the universe, about existence, about healing, what is mental health, and there was really nobody who could guide me through it to help me from a Western point of view and from an indigenous point of view in order to ground the experience that I had. So that's why another reason I think this course is unique, because we have psychiatrists and psychologists who are teaching based on our own experience with the knowledge from indigenous peoples as well, and doing it in partnership with indigenous maestros.
Mm. really learning to ground that language in our kind of like one-on-one or one-to-group kind of interactions with the people that we work with, and how to meet them kind of where they're at, like often people will people will access these sorts of treatments from all sorts of kind of reasoning and underpinnings. Some people might be out of curiosity and they just want to learn about it. Some people might be in their training, really want to kind of like be on a path for curanderismo. Some people who are deeply traumatized or maybe have been, yeah, exhausted all kind of possible treatments and come from all sorts of backgrounds, from different religions to different diversity and cultural traits. People who might be very, yeah, very not spiritual, very scientific, very logical in their approach to these things. And then how can we, as a mentor, be accepting and open to that, and really actively listen to the people that we are speaking with, and be able to meet them in the middle and actually learn the language that overlaps between these different paradigms, and actually realize maybe we'll just kind of like saying the same thing with different lenses, and how can we yeah, find the next step, rather than being so far out of this person's comfort zone, and actually potentially leading to a damaged kind of therapeutic rapport with our clients. And yeah, this is definitely something that we see a lot when we are working in our research, when we're working clinically as well. People who might just be, yeah, in the wild west of drinking ayahuasca in the jungle, for example, just was never, what happens with if the curandero is attacking me in my dream, or I have this entity that's stuck to me and I don't really know what to do with it, or there's something happened to my connection with things, or everything I'm seeing is black and white now. Actually realizing, okay, these things can happen, and how can we find the right person to signposting, whether we are within our kind of like remit to support this person through this thing, and really kind of like be that space holder for the person. And yeah, I'm just kind of like reflecting a little bit on the importance of that right now, because there's just so many retreats popping up everywhere out there, where we are seeing all of these retreat centers either giving psilocybin or ayahuasca or iboga or anything, right? And then one really kind of like big gap in that retreat model is often the lack of resource to provide the preparation and the integration for those people going through that experience. Maybe sometimes they'll provide a session before and after, but considering the sheer caliber of experience that's kind of like coming through, one session is often just like not enough. So therefore, we really kind of need to upskill our supporters, our mentors, or our clinicians, and even people in kind of like frontline services. And that's why we really kind of welcome people from yeah, more Western trained therapeutic backgrounds to come through as well, to really yeah, to be that voice to represent in whatever space that you are working in, to really, yeah, to really spread the awareness and the knowledge that that yeah, I guess like the indigenous people have found, from their many years of tradition, to help people navigate these very deep psychedelic spaces. And yeah, now we're at this juncture of yeah, of safeguard and support.
Mm, mm. Another thing that one of the things that really struck me when I started training with the Shipibo, which was just completely different to my training in Western medicine, was when you train with the Shipibo, as many people on this call are on that path. One of the first things that you do is you begin to treat yourself. You have to focus on treating yourself. And then only when you've got to a certain level of treating yourself can you begin to treat others. And that was really the opposite of my experience in Western medicine, where if you had anything, any kind of anxieties, any insecurities, you just bury them deep as far down as you can and kind of ignore them and just, wait for them to bubble up in about 10 to 15 years and eventually burn out as like a middle-aged psychiatrist. And that's kind of the trajectory of where you'd be expected. And so in the course, we try to bring that in as well, as in look after yourself, do your self work. And if you want to treat patients properly, if you want to work with clients properly, and you want to be an effective mentor, whether or not that's standalone or that's in collaboration with whatever else that you're doing, make sure you're looking after yourself. To be of service, you have to be in good condition. You have to be in a reasonable state in your mind and your body. And so we've woven that through the course as well to make sure that it's as much as possible, and we've definitely had a lot of feedback with people saying this, that it's transformational, that the course itself is transformational for you. It's not just a qualification, it's actually a transformational process that you go through when you're going through the course as well. So I just wanted to share that too, because I think that that's been really important for me when designing it.
Mm. Yeah, and it's so nice to go through every time. Like I definitely remember like the end of my doctorate when I was just like, oh my God, I hate my life. I hate this. I don't want to do this anymore. I just want this to be over. And like literally everyone unanimously on the course is kind of just like, oh my God, it's like I just want this to be over. Everyone hates this. Um, and then after doing it, there's like maybe like at least like a year or two of kind of post burnout, kind of coming back to baseline to try to kind of grapple with life again. But that's, that shouldn't be the learning curve.
That's not how medicine should work, right? Like medicine should be something that builds you up, and it should be enjoyable process, challenging but enjoyable. And it's just a lot of the time it's not.
Yeah, and we really hope that learning process is for you guys, like, and yeah, and this is, is something that we've heard, and I really feel that, I'm sure those of you who have gone through maybe extended retreats or are on your own training, and then, thinking about your own kind of like kind of educational path in the discipline that you really love, yeah, by the end of it you're like, yeah, that I'm so glad I've changed my practice. I'm like glowing, and I can't wait to like share this with the world, and I can't wait to kind of just, yeah, I'm just feel more alive because of it, and this is really an aspect we we really try to do our best to embed into this learning process, but at the same time leave it with the the rigorousness of education, where we can provide you with accreditation and we can provide you with certification to go off and do the thing that you need to do, and have, I guess, like credibility as well in this world that is, in a field that is just full of minefields and full of, yeah, malpractice and all kinds of levels of quality as well. So really hope that this can be a good string to your arrows. Yeah, you know what I mean.
A good bowstring, very well put.
Exactly.
Um, so a little bit more about the kind of the nuts and bolts of the actual course then. So what we've done is each week you have a different topic, and each week that topic will either fall into the categories of preparation, integration, ceremonial navigation, cultural considerations. And the way that we've done it is that you'll have essential material that you have to view before you come to, well, you don't have to view, but we very much recommend that you do view it before you come to the live session. And the live session will be every other week. And so you have this essential material, which would normally be under an hour, most of them are each week, and then you'd have a more deep dives, longer discussions that we've recorded, most of them with various experts, materials that we've designed ourselves. And then you would also have assessments as well. And so at the end of each 2 weeks, you have a live session where we would come together and we would discuss all of the materials. And the idea is it's something called a flipped classroom approach. So you have all the materials which we've recorded already that you go through in your own pace, and we suggest you go as deep as you can into those materials. And then when we have the live sessions every 2 weeks, we make it as interactive as possible. So that's either practicing our mentoring skills through something called popcorn mentorship, where one of us, usually me, will pretend to be a client. We'll have a case vignette. People will be asking questions at different times, so you can see exactly how other people are doing their mentorship. It may well be that we have a guest lecturer who comes in and does a live session as well. Whatever it is, it's usually a highlight because they're interactive and they're fun. These live sessions, they're fantastic. Then as you move throughout the course, you'll not only be expected to be checking in each week with your buddy and practicing your mentorship skills with your buddy, but we're going to ask you to record your sessions and then send them to us, and myself and WaiFung will go through each one individually and will provide you feedback. And we'll do that twice throughout the course. And then at the final end of the course, you have to have completed all of the materials. You have to have done all of the quizzes that we have throughout the course as well. And then you do one longer assessment. So you record yourself with a client. It doesn't have to be a real client. It can be your buddy or somebody else who you're practicing with, and then send it to myself and WaiFung, and then we will go into it in more detail, but you'll know what it is that you have to aim for. You'll know what it is that you have to say, because we'll give you the mark scheme beforehand. And we'll go into it in more detail to make sure that you fit that criteria to be a mentor by the end. So we've really put the rigorousness of Western training, Western medicine, Western psychotherapy into this course alongside indigenous science as well, to make sure that by the time you finish the course, you're properly equipped to see clients, and that the sessions that you do are actively having a benefit in the wider world as well.
Mm. And yeah, we also offer supervision as well, like consultation as you kind of go into it, and definitely acknowledge that, yeah, it's like any training, it's a lifelong journey. And this is something to really kind of a good foundation for you to start doing the work that you would like to do. And I think when it comes to kind of like learning in this capacity, there's always more, there's always kind of like deeper ways that you can embed some of the teachings that you've been given. And I think one big part of that is the community aspect that we are kind of building with this, like by joining onto this course and by joining onto our kind of cohorts, you will be kind of open to our community and, really start to link up with other students, with our graduates that come through the course in the past, and really kind of share good practice and also referral pathways for these retreat centers that might be out there looking for mentors, and, providing work ongoing as well. Like we do have, quite a few people can leave the course doing a bunch of stuff, like sometimes people might go on to do mentorship and help with preparation and integration, but then also people who might decide to go on and teach and be part of education, or people who just go back to being a psychologist and work in an addiction center with now this new string to their bow, and then also other people who might be artists or something, and actually by learning all of these different disciplines have a new way of approaching their art in a more spiritual, energetic, kind of more holistic manner. So yeah, this is really something for everyone, and I hope you find this as well.
Awesome. Okay, so I think what we should do is I want to quickly introduce you to Roz, who is another one of the core members of Anaya. And she's going to tell you about a few offers that we have for the course. And then I want to open up the conversation. If you have anything you'd like to talk about, us to talk about more, then please put it in the chat or just raise your hand. If you have any questions, then please ask them now. But before we do, Roz, do you want to quickly say hello and then let everyone know about the offers and things that we have for the course, and then we'll get the Q&A going.
Hi, and thank you so much, both, and thank you so much, everyone. It's been really cool to see all of the amazing things that you're doing in the chat. So I just wanted to say that one of the things that we're offering this time is because it can be a very personal process thinking about how this training is going to fit with what you want to do next, where you're coming from. So what we wanted to offer this time is a 30-minute discovery call, which is your chance to tell us how you hope this training will fit into your life, and just to kind of talk through what you're looking for within it and make sure it's a good fit. So if you would like to book one of those with me, then I'll put the Calendly link in the chat in a minute, and so we can just get together. The course starts on the 23rd of September, so anytime in the next few weeks we can just get together and have a chat about how you're feeling about the course and whether it works with what your plans are. And then another thing that we've got coming up is an event called The Arts and Sciences of Psychedelic Navigation. And that's going to be with WaiFung, and it's going to be a masterclass looking at icaros and music and sound vibrations and all of the different technologies that go into the Shipibo ayahuasca ceremonies themselves. And we're going to be holding that on September the 8th. So I'll put a link in the chat for that as well. And the last thing that I would like to tell you about is the fact that we do offer scholarships. So we our highest scholarship is a 50% offering. Sometimes we offer discounts kind of between 20 and 30%, depending on if someone doesn't quite meet the 50% criteria, but we still really, really want
Really want you to join us.
a scholarship. And yes, please do apply if it feels applicable. And the last thing I want to say is that we today, for everyone who's here in this group now, we are going to offer a 15% discount on the course fees for the September intake. So I'm going to put the discount code in the chat as well, and that's going to be valid for 48 hours from now. So if you want to join us and you're sure, then the discount code is a good opportunity to do that. So put all those links in the chat in a moment.
Thank you, Rose.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Roz. Alrighty, let's start working our way through some of these questions. What I'll do is I'll read the questions that are here in the chat, but by all means, if you want to just raise your hand, then you can just speak as well, because that might be easier.
There are some questions in the chat. Shall we start with those?
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay, so Juan says, do you offer trainings for another part of the world? Juan, do you mean what do you mean by that? Because it's an international training that's online. So it would obviously, as long as the time zones work for you, then it would be okay. Do you have something in particular in mind?
Yeah, we have people from Australia, from the States, from the UK, from different kind of from all over. Obviously, the Australians have to be it typically starts at around 6 p.m. For 90 minutes, the live sessions, which is a bit more of a schlep for that side of the world, but it's still possible.
Yeah. Okay.
So the other question.
We got one for you, WaiFung. So Vanessa says, after working with the Shipibo, what do you feel they have learned from our more Western approach?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah, I think it's definitely shifted a lot. Well, integration is a big one, isn't it? Like for the longest time, the Shipibos haven't really had to think much about, and other indigenous tribes as well, haven't had to think much about integration because they kind of live in it. They kind of live in the jungle. They are surrounded by a very supportive community and support from the plants as one as they need. And then it is the Westerners going in there, and suddenly we have this drastic kind of contrasting shift to go back to our concrete jungle, and that kind of transition has become a big need for this integration. And it's I'm laughing because I'm just it was funny because one of our maestros in the jungle, Don Enrique, he had been working for a long time with Westerners, and I think more recently, I think Callum can speak to this, he's probably in the room right now. But yeah, he's more recently started saying to people, oh, maybe you can do some yoga or something, to help you kind of get back, and started kind of paying some attention to aftercare, which is really nice to see. So that's one of the things that they've taken more from our approach.
Thanks, WaiFung. So Yasha, good to see you, Yasha. Yasha has a couple of questions. He says, I have done integration training with ICEERS. How does this course differ from that training? Are you familiar with ICEERS? Yes. So we work very closely with ICEERS. We certainly have a number of projects that we're doing together, collaborations between Onaya and ICEERS. They are our good colleagues and dear friends. Yeah, the ICEA's integration training is fantastic. I would definitely recommend it, but it is very different to this training. So, firstly, it's much shorter. It's just focused on integration and it's just focused on psychotherapeutic techniques that you could use with that. It's also not a qualification, it's just a certificate. Whereas ours, and you just have to turn up and you can just do it, you just have to watch the videos. Whereas ours is much longer, it's much more extensive, it's actually a qualification, it takes 6 months, you have exams. It also focuses on preparation, integration, ceremonial navigation, risk management, trauma-informed care, how you can bridge the gap between Western science and indigenous knowledge ethically, all of the ethics to do with decolonization, how to bring decolonization into your work. It's much more thorough and it's a much bigger undertaking than the ICEA's integration course. Yasha also says, I have extensive training with the Mawa and the Lopez lineage, but I wanted to know if this training can connect well with the Kamsa and Kofan tribes in Colombia. Totally. So this ties in with another question down here from where was it? Daniel saying, is this training also applicable to psilocybin or is it just ayahuasca? It's applicable to all psychedelics, and we do focus on different psychedelics throughout the course. So WaiFung and I, we run a research organization focused on ayahuasca, and we train with the Shipibo using ayahuasca. So the majority of our experience is with ayahuasca. I've also worked on clinical trials with psilocybin, but it's mainly ayahuasca. And so that definitely does influence our knowledge and our course. But many of our experts work with different medicines. So we have people from the Maztec community who come in and they speak about psilocybin mushrooms. We even have clinical trials that discuss MDMA, ketamine, iboga, all of these different medicines as well. So it's definitely not an ayahuasca course. It's a psychedelic course in general, but it does lean on the Shipibo side of things because of our expertise. One thing that we've also found as well is that depending on who's in the group, it tends to lean more towards their medicines because that's the way the conversation and the discussion goes to. So WaiFung and I do have expertise, in many different medicines, but I think, it's probably safe to say ayahuasca is the one that's closest to our heart.
Yep.
Okay. And another one from Yasha. Yasha says, are we just focusing on ayahuasca or are we going to focus on purges other than master plant dietas, energetic differences of different master plants and their integration process? WaiFung, you can answer this one.
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah, we've spoken to the ayahuasca side. Yeah, in terms of master plant dietas, energetic differences, of master plants. So yeah, we definitely recognize the importance of that. And just for people on the course, on this call who might be unaware. So there are these traditions in indigenous cultures, especially with the Shipibo, where they've kind of devised this technology to help one, I guess, assimilate with plants that can help them in ceremony in their everyday lives within this container called the dieta. And it's definitely a very, it's quite a niche, one of the world's best kept secrets, to be honest. Like, is an amazing thing, and more people could benefit from knowing about it. But we recognize that it is, to dive super duper deeply into it would require a whole lifetime of a course to understand more about dietas. But we do have deep dives and elements that speak to diets. So for example, one of our maestros that have been training in the jungle, he provides us with some really helpful talks and practices and meditations that go quite deeply into how one can look after your dieta, how one can feed your dieta, what dieta kind of means, and also how to work with certain things when things go wrong with the dieta, like crosses and things. But yeah, that's definitely not in the core part of the course, and is more in the deep dives for those who wish to dive deeper into that particular area. Yeah,
Cool.
that answers your question.
I'm going to send this one your way as well, WaiFung. So Juan says, I'm thinking, where can I apply the knowledge of this course?
Yeah, so as I was saying, like a lot of people go off and do a lot of different things from this course, and even if it's just a purely from an intellectual and curiosity sake, it's very interesting. I find myself kind of like, every time I listen to the same lecture, I kind of learn more. For example, but in terms of kind of applying this knowledge, it can really be where you are placed in your own kind of field of study to be able to work in your own scope of practice so for example, professionally as a clinician, when you are seeing these sorts of clients and people come to you in your clinic, to be able to speak to the psychedelic preparation and integration side, but then also outside of just that, education, in research as well. Like I think it's so important if we have any researchers in the space where you might be, yeah, thinking about, or maybe quite jaded by the research cultures and systems in place, and want to look a little bit more holistically and how one might be able to, and ethically, like how one might be able to apply some of these teachings from the indigenous side and the Western side into how we approach science, for artists as well, to be thinking about actually like how our devotional kind of prayerness of the artwork can change and transform the way I approach sound or my paintbrush. This is something, I'm a musician myself, and this is something that's been very transformational to me, to be able to think quite holistically about the intersections of disciplines when it comes to my own kind of like artistic expression. And then obviously in kind of everything else to do with, it's quite kind of psychedelic based, I guess, like if you're like coaching and stuff. So I hope that yeah, it's generally quite applicable. And to yourself in your daily life, there's some like really helpful somatic practices that I give like within the inner work kind of sections of the course, where just in my daily life to learn to soften, to learn to kind of read my body, to learn to mindfully move, to learn to, how to, work with my own kind of like ventral vagal system in a way that kind of is indicative to not just how I move, but interactively with the people I interact with as well. So, it can be quite wide reaching.
Yeah, we've had a couple of people who have done the course just for interest's sake and haven't wanted, have had no intention of applying it, which has been interesting. And then a few other researchers who have done it as well to try and get inspiration about how they can lead their research teams, which has been really great to have them doing the course as well. Okay, great. So Matthew says, I have only participated in ceremonies in the Shipibo lineage. That's what I had access to, not a choice per se. Wondering what other lineages there are, how they are different, and whether this training will prepare us for all or most ayahuasca ceremonies, or primarily for Shipibo ceremonies. Yeah, thanks, Matthew. So the answer to that question is there are so many ayahuasca lineages that it's it's almost impossible to name them all because many of them are tiny tribes and they're all around South America that can be quite difficult to track down. And there are many of them that people didn't even really know existed. There are some of them that are kind of splitting and coming together. So it's always kind of in flux. And many of them approach ayahuasca in very different ways as well. So, for example, the Shipibo, always you drink ayahuasca in the dark and you sing at caros. The Huni Quinn is much more of a celebration around a fire, quite often in the daytime. And so this course definitely isn't focused on the Shipibo. Again, WaiFung and I use Shipibo examples because that's what our training's in. And a lot of the experts that we have are Shipibo maestros and the Shipibo curanderos shamans who we're working with. But at the same time, we do have other curanderos who aren't Shipibo. We do have other indigenous peoples from different lineages who work with different medicines. And it's worth saying that all of the information that we provide is universal. It's not just for the Shipibo. It applies whether you're in a traditional context, whether you're in a neo-shamanic context, whether you're in a clinical context. And we also make that distinction as to where that knowledge applies. So if you just drink ayahuasca with a Shipibo, it'd be perfect for you. If you don't drink ayahuasca and not with a Shipibo, it's also perfect for you as well. Please don't think this is just an ayahuasca and a Shipibo course. It's not. It's a universal course, but it just so happens that our expertise fall in that area, and that's where we train.
Exactly.
Okay. So Vanessa says, currently the course doesn't have an integration into the business aspect, where other programs offer a portion of the course that focuses on marketing, business development, etc. Is there any way that this can be implemented for this cohort? Yeah, it's funny you bring that up. We were just talking about this the last 2 days. And so we were planning on having that module in there for the last group, but the person that we were relying on to build it didn't end up building it. So we're going to come up with another module, which is all about how to transform the passion that you have into profit, how to make this a functioning business for you, because of course it's a career move after all, and we need to make sure that you're supported and that you're being reciprocally rewarded for the energy and for the efforts that you're putting into guiding people. So the answer to that question is yes, we're working on it. Leave it with us.
Tatiana?
Vanessa saying, will that be for this cohort?
Yeah, that'll be for
Yep.
this cohort. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Vanessa's happy. We're all happy.
Yeah, we're all happy.
Another string to her bow. Fantastic. Okay.
We have a very good person on it as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, you can go, Wifong. I'm getting a dry
Yeah.
throat.
Tatiana says, I work at a retreat center in Brazil called Akasha, a retreat center, where we collaborate with the Yawanawa, the Hinaquin people. Their way of working is quite different from the Shipibo. Do you think it's possible to work together even though the cultural and spiritual foundations are so different, yet in some ways so similar? Yes, definitely. Did we just answer this question? It's probably leads to the same answer, I think. Like, essentially, yes, I think so. We keep it broad because we are seeing these kind of overarching generalizations that are common themes arising from these different traditions, even outside of ayahuasca into kind of like philosophical Buddhist kind of like nature into kind of clinical, for example. And the way I'm, like what I'm thinking is like when we are just to make it very clear, we're not teaching anyone how to dose. We're not teaching anyone how to kind of like give a psychedelic. That's a whole lifetime's worth of training and very specific traditions within that. We are here to support the bookending experience of that crescendo of the psychedelic experience. And in that, there is a lot of overlaps and parallel between, going off to a mushroom retreat to a ayahuasca retreat, let alone ayahuasca retreats within different traditions. And yeah, obviously, we speak a lot more to the Shipibo side, but then because of the broad and wide-rangingness of just general safety and preparation and integration and very kind of like core practices like the somatic, like the psychological, like the social and systemic ways of working, these are all very kind of like holistic and quite, I guess, like, yeah, quite versatile tools and techniques that we will be kind of bringing to you that we've learned from both sides of our training. So yeah, in that way, we really do hope that yeah, even though you're coming from all the way from Brazil and different traditions, that this will be even just as beneficial for you.
And just a nice synchronicity there. So we're actually starting to conduct research at Akasha. So that's an Onaya Akasha collaboration with Michelle, who works for Maps Italy. So yeah, we are branching into these areas in terms of research at the moment with Akasha, which is quite nice. Okay.
Getting a little nudge from Roz. I think we're at the time frame. No, we?
Are we?
Yeah, I thought this was like a 90-minute thing.
Yeah, I thought we were going to a 9. Let's keep going to a 9,
Yeah.
and then if anyone needs to leave, they can leave until we run out of questions.
Right. Yeah. No, I would love to just hear more from the group if people are. Yeah.
Okay, so continuing to work our way down through the questions. So Till says, I'm considering traveling to Colombia this winter. Would you be willing to put me in touch with some of the healers and tribes that you're working with? That's fine. I mean, as I said, most of our links are with the Shipibo, but we do have some other links with other tribes that we're beginning to work more closely with. So Till, just drop us a message at support@onaya.io and we'll figure out how best to support you with your travels. Okay. And Waifeng, do you want to answer this question from Aggie? What is the certificate and qualification? Aggie is based in the UK.
So the certificate and qualification is provided by so we work with an American educational board called the ANWP. I always struggle to remember what
The
the
American Association of Natural Wellness Practitioners.
exactly what it stands for. And they are an international body, and essentially they have accredited is a educational board with an international body that have certified our course. So essentially, you will be kind of certified by them, and then they will provide a number of kind of benefits for being on their board. But it is true that a lot of these benefits might be restricted to the states, especially in terms of things like insurance, in terms of some of the, some of the kind of like free stuff or discounts you can get out there. But I think with them, essentially they will also be kind of governed by state laws as well, so you will be working within your own kind of scope of practice even with this qualification. And then also obviously the CPD and the continuing educational units that is provided by them will be more for kind of like American professionals, because we understand that CPU in the UK works from a completely different kind of educational system. So yeah. But yeah, nonetheless, though, this is definitely, for people who are working here, you can still be kind of seeing clients within your practice. It just wouldn't be with the educational units that you'll be provided with their qualification, if that makes sense.
Cool. Thanks. Okay, and Tatiana says she is working with Michelle Akasha. That's fantastic. And that is the end of the questions. So, does anybody else have anything else that they'd like to ask us, or any questions or comments? Oh, yep, we do have one. Okay, so Anna says, next to the mentorship training, I'm also very interested in engaging more in your scientific work and current Onaya research projects. Currently doing my master's in psychotherapy and would love to do my thesis and later a PhD in the intersection of shamanism, plant medicine, and psychotherapy. You're in the right place. To whom could I direct my questions and interests for internships or collaborations? Send an email to support@naya.io with your background and CV, and we'll get back to you, and we'll figure out how best to work with you alongside this.
Can you pop that email under her comment, Ross, please? Thank you. Yeah,
Great.
yeah. And we're always looking for support on that front as well. So if you are a researcher or someone who's interested as well, please feel free to kind of get in touch. Just got too much data and there's not enough hands to like manage it.
Okay. I think we might be there and have naturally come to the end. Does
Yeah.
anybody have any final thoughts, questions, comments?
And want to share their voice here as well. Yeah, any reflections as well. Could open up discussions.
If not, we can activate WaiFung's band to gently see us out of today's session.
Just gender plug. I might plug that in the chat.
United Freedom Collective, see them live in London at some point soon.
Very good.
Okay. In which case, thank you so much, everybody. Oh, wait, sorry, a couple more here. Has the cost of the course been mentioned? Yes. It's 4,200 US dollars. But for you guys, it'll be cheaper because you've got the 15% discount.
Do look out for our scholarships as well and applications too.
And Till says, how important are qualifications for participation? Well, Till, anybody can do the course. So like we said before, you can practice within your scope of practice. So this will be your first qualification, then you can then practice as a mentor. But if you're already a psychotherapist, then you can practice as a psychotherapist and mentor. So it expands your process of qualification, but you don't have to have a qualification to access the course. And we'll teach you all of the basics in terms of Western psychotherapy, psychotherapeutic skills, so that you know how to do that.
And just on the kind of costing front, like we completely understand that definitely might be a barrier for some people, especially, see if you can reach us and apply for that scholarship as well. And we will, we really want to be able to kind of like have you on the course, and definitely don't want pricing to be a barrier. And if it's something that we can tailor a support plan or a payment plan or something over a manageable amount of time for you, we will definitely do our best to endeavor and cater for that. It's just for us to kind of keep this running and to be able to share it with more people. We would love to be able to help you with that. So.
Okay. Alrighty. In which case, Activate United Freedom Collective. Everyone, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. Really hope to see you all soon. Do drop us an email if you want to continue the conversation. And yeah, much love.
Thank you. Yeah, just so you know, this is a track that I actually wrote on the other that I'm sharing with you. That's coming out on an EP at the end of this month. Next month. I'm gonna share firstly this, and then sorry, I should have been more ready for this. Thank you, everyone.